Welcome, everyone. We are back with another episode of The Journey to More. You know who I am, but just in case you are new around here, my name is Attorney Jamila Moore, and I am the entrepreneur's attorney and business strategist. Of course, because my business is branded as I Am and More, there's so much more about me. But today we're here to really talk about you and to help you. And to help me help you, I have the doctor, Theoria Cason. Now, let me tell you about this. Do you know that less than 2% of Americans even earn a doctorate degree? And then of that number, only 4.5% are Black women. Now, we have one here, y'all. Yes, we have one here. She's an author, international speaker, transformational coach, diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant. See, she's in the more. She know about the more. Where she is certified. She's a certified diversity professional by Cornell. We've heard of Cornell. But y'all ain't gonna believe this. She's an entrepreneur.
Yes.
And she teaches women how to go above and beyond the ceilings that she's already shattered. And so let's welcome Dr. Theoria Cason to the stage. Hey!
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
I am so happy to have you. And you know, we are probably two, we not probably are. We are two very successful women,
Mhm.
right? And you know, with climbing the ladder to success, rejection comes.
Yes.
And so today we're just talking about overcoming rejection and reimagining rejection because we probably were never meant to fit in.
Mm-hmm.
Never meant to fit in. And you know, this topic is so important because we have this issue and it plagues children, it plagues adults. And so I wanted to make sure that this audience was growing to more and that they were set up to succeed in that way. Now, let me tell you, I define rejection as protection.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts about rejection?
I think that rejection is a necessary part of life, and I say that because there's so much that we don't know, and if life always goes according to the plan based on how we perceive it supposed to be, then we run the risk of not being prompted to dig a little deeper and to look within ourselves to find levels of resilience that we didn't know that we had until we needed to dig a little deeper to rely on those tools that exist and lie therein, but oftentimes are latent until a circumstance requires us to use them.
Y'all, I know you might have missed it, but she just told you rejection pulls the best out of you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Put that in the chat. Rejection pulls the best out of you. So, listen, I'm about to get a little coaching here myself as we interview her. So, if rejection brings the best out of you, is this something that we should be welcoming in our lives?
I think that's a hard question to answer in one way. I think that the surface level of my response would be would be to say yes, but oftentimes it's difficult to reach that yes until hindsight. In the moment when we're first presented with rejection, there's the reasonable human response of experiencing disappointment and sadness, and the cognitive dissonance between what we thought we were sure was going to happen, and either something that happened or something that didn't happen, because non-events can be as impactful as things that actually occur. But it's in the process of that discomfort and the space for reflection, right, that we can come to understand where there may have been opportunities to either continue to learn or grow, or to the point that you made previously about rejection being protection. Sometimes the no is the protection because we may have been misled, or we may have been beguiled down a path that was never meant for us. But it could be that coming up to hitting the wall of no helps us get to a place in hindsight where you like, I didn't even realize that that person was not actually for me. I didn't realize that that person was that was a whole trap. And I'm glad that I swerved that trap. And so um, I, I can't say that I would encourage people at face value to say, yes, I welcome rejection, because I'm not sure if that's a realistic standard um, to expect. And I'm a really pragmatic person, and I always try to lean on managing expectations. And first, it's managing the expectations that I have of myself, and then what I try to project onto others. However, what I will say is, I think that we should welcome opportunities to be reflective and welcome opportunities to be introspective, because there's likely always something that we missed in the process. And it's in those moments of reflection that we can go back and pick up tools. Like if you were playing a video game, sometimes there's those like bonus things that you can go back and like get, pick up the tool that you were rushing past, because that's a tool that you'll need for the next level. And so rejection can help us frame the lens through which we need to view the next challenge in the process of leveling up.
Just go ahead and when this is done, go back to minute 6, maybe 5:30, and just play that on repeat so you can let all of those nuggets and all of that meat that she just gave us resonate with you, and be a guiding principle for your life. Right. And I think the thing that I think about is we can't really avoid rejection.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When we go out and we apply for new opportunities, there's a likelihood that we will get rejected.
Mm-hmm.
We're both entrepreneurs. And so when we go out and we make an offer,
Mm-hmm.
there will be a ton of rejection, even though there will be some acceptance. And so this rule, these things that we're talking about as it relates to rejection are keys to our success.
Absolutely.
So, man, you should be tagging someone right now, subscribing to this channel, and liking this post so that as many people as possible can make sure that they overcome rejection and reframe rejection. All right. So, we talked about rejection being a form of protection. Has there ever been a moment in your life where in hindsight you realize, man, that was protection?
Yeah, certainly. And I have a story for you, but before I share that story, I want to interject this notion, because one of the things that you gave the people is the understanding that rejection is inevitable, right? But I think it's important to not embrace internal message and a mentality that I am rejected, or that I am a person who won't be accepted, or that my idea or that my initiative is one that will perpetually be told no, because the mindset of accepting rejection as a fundamental truth in the way that we navigate the world can serve as a barrier to our sense of resilience and tenacity. And so what I heard from you and what we're trying to communicate is that the experience of rejection is inevitable, but you are not rejected. Your idea is not rejected. And that period of time is simply that. It's a period of time. It's not a finite existence, right? So it's not a perpetual state that you need to exist in, and it's not a perpetual state that your mentality needs to adopt. It's a statement of fact, like you will experience it in life. But it's also important to remember that when you do, you say, check, they told me this is going to happen. I need to keep moving forward. And so, what I will offer in response to that and your question is a story. Um, and so I can tell you that we began by talking about one of my credentials. And so I was groomed to be a doctor. I am privileged to have been blessed with a certain level of intellect that aligns with traditional, like, school environment. And so I always did well in school. I placed into all of the advanced learning, the advanced gifted, etc., blah, blah, blah. Typically, I was one of two, maybe three at the most brown kids in those classes, but I was often tracked in the high performing lane academically. And my mother and my brother used to always joke that I would be a professional student because I just love learning, right? And so when I went to college as a first generation college student, I went with the mentality that I was going to get my PhD. There was no question about it. I naively shared that, not knowing the level and difficulty and challenges that I would experience in that journey. But it was never a question whether or not I was going to be Dr. Theoria Cason. That part of my future was set in my mind. And so I made it through undergrad, not without challenges, but I persevered. And then I, applied to grad school, and like that was kind of an easy process for me. And so when I got my master's degree, I went to work full time with the mentality that I would work 3 years to get some transferable skills, because the nature of the doctoral degree that I thought I was going to pursue would require me to work with people in a helping capacity. And so I said, I'm going to take this role and help the people. And when I got ready to apply to a PhD program, I was rejected not 1 year, but 2 years in a row. And the first time that I applied, I picked two schools and put all my eggs in both those baskets, because the last time I applied to grad school, it was easy. And so I thought, pick these two. I'm awesome. I'm going to get in. And I was also using the idea of going to school full time as an escape route for a toxic workplace environment that I was in. And so in my mind, it was like, bet, I'm gonna go to school. I'm gonna get out of this place. I'm gonna get away from these people. And that's gonna be my exit, right, into a new plane that was always meant for me. So imagine the level of devastation that I experienced when I didn't get into grad school the first time. And upon reflection, I realized that my devastation and like, I grieved the loss of those two no's as though I had lost a person, like a loved one. And it wasn't because I lost my conviction to go to school, but what I realized is that was my escape plan. And so what I lost was what I thought was the one way out that I felt so desperately that I needed, because the workplace environment was so problematic for me. And so I had to recalibrate. I had to recalibrate my mindset and come up with a new plan. And that required a lot of reflection. It required a lot of talking to God. It required having conversations with mentors who held the path that I thought I wanted to be on. And so the next time that I applied to schools, I also applied to jobs. And so what happened in that time frame was that I also became an asset, an essential asset in my workplace environment for a particular skill set that I was cultivating. And it became very apparent to my people leader at that time that whether or not I was going to school or whether or not I was going to go work in a new place, I was leaving. And so he had gotten a bonus year out of me the first time because I didn't get into grad school. Whether or not I got into a doctoral program, and we can talk about access and opportunities and why there's so few of us that have these terminal degrees, particularly at the highest level, on another call. But one thing was really apparent is whether or not I got into grad school, I'm hireable. And somebody was going to pick me up in the profession. And so that subsequently gave me some leverage to negotiate a new job opportunity that he had presented me with that no one in our department knew about, because he needed me to stay on to do this essential work, but lowballed me in the salary range. And so that's an important part of the story, because had I not recalibrated the opportunity that I wanted and then became convicted in my worth, I wasn't desperate the second time around because I developed a new plan, right? And so I wasn't so desperate to move on from that opportunity that I was willing to accept anything, because I had lived through a whole nother year of working in that position. So I knew that if I needed to stay a whole nother year in order to get what I knew that I deserved professionally, or to get into another round of applications, I knew I had the capacity to endure, because God had brought me through that extended year of my time in that role. And so I was blessed with an opportunity that was created for me in the same place that I was trying to run away from, and financially blessed when it came to the salary that we ultimately settled on. That's important to the first part of your question, because what it gave me then was a position to broaden my scope and my knowledge capacity around the work that I was doing that made me essential, and ultimately became one of the focal points for what I ended up studying in the doctoral program that I got into the following year. So when we talk about all things working together for the good, I needed all of that rejection, because I needed that entire experience of rejection and cultivating a set of expertise to help expand the lens that I was developing in that space, talking about sexual violence prevention, bias response, and the importance of developing solutions with people who hold marginalized identities in a way that was culturally competent, right? And so that's one of the reasons that I became essential, because of that last tagline, the cultural competence that's essential for cultivating a response, an institutional response when people experience harm, and a connection to the work that I do now as a practitioner in the space of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I needed all of it. I needed all of that to get me on the path to where I am now.
So, I mean, that story was jam packed. And
Yes.
because I want my audience to be able to have some takeaways, sometimes rejection means recalibration with reflection. And when you experience rejection, it's about building the capacity to endure.
Yes.
Because, like, we will experience rejection, we will experience moments where we have to endure. And you should be taking this down. Like, this is a note taking one, y'all. This really is a note taking one, because it's all around us. And she's giving us tools and strategies to overcome rejection, and then reimagine when we get in these moments where we may be disappointed, where things don't work out the way that we thought they would. Even as it relates to her salary, there was so much in there where it was like, I'm worth this, and you're deciding not to give me my worth, right? That goes with a whole bunch of like thoughts and understandings. And the other key that she told us, like, even though you experience rejection, you have to make sure you're telling yourself that you don't own the role or the mindset that you are rejected.
Yes.
And so I like to say this thing now where rejection is around sometimes leads to the right door. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we're trying to knock on the wrong door. And so God Himself shuts it to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that you are on the right path. I would ask you to give me an example, but you gave us an example already through your story where, it was like, wait a minute, this door got shut the first time around.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't go as planned, but no, God had His own plan to get you down the road to be
Mm-hmm.
positioned for what He had for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you have any other stories about a time where a door was shut, but it was really to get the right door open?
I have many. So let me reflect on. Um, I'll tell you about a recent one that I experienced in the
Okay.
workplace. And so this one is one where I was performing. I'm a high performer. Like I explained that I performed well in academic spaces, and that standard of excellence transitions into all that I do, but especially in the workplace environment. And um, I am privileged to be able to continue to perform well, even when things are hard, and even when there are challenges. And so, this example of a closed door is particularly related to um, a role that I recently held, where I was the hiring manager in a process to build my team, and my peers within that organization systematically worked together to undermine my authority and block my decisions as a hiring manager. Created false narratives about me in the process, created arbitrary requirements that were not essential to be successful in the role, and were not a part of the job description that I wrote, or a part of the job posting that I wrote that had been approved and vetted by our shared leader. But it was the threat of exponential excellence that caused them to behave in that way. So much so that they wanted to make sure that I was not able to add another person like me, who held my standards of excellence and expertise into the organization, because they saw the impact that I was having in such a short amount of time and said, "We've already reached our capacity. We can't take any more of people like you." Um, I'm paraphrasing to summarize the behavioral patterns that I observed in hindsight. Now, the reason that I consider that a blessing is because, had God allowed me to get the thing that I wanted, I would have stayed in that organization and continued to outperform, because I would have had my ideal team, right? But it doesn't mean that that workplace environment would have been healthy for the people that I would have been bringing into the space, nor would was it necessary for me to stay there any longer than I needed to be there. And what that rejection did for me was to expedite my exit out of that organization. And I never planned to retire from that place, but I also did not plan to leave as soon as I did. But what I didn't know was that on the other side of the stress that I endured personally to perform in the midst of their sabotage, was that God had another blessing for me in a different opportunity. The other thing that I got from reflecting on my experience in that organization was cultivating a language for what I wanted for myself next? And so it's one thing to be able to recognize the unsavory aspects of your current experience and what you don't like. It's something different to be able to reframe the things that you don't like into language to describe what it is that you want instead. And so during that period of frustration, I cultivated a lens and a language to say, in my next role, this is what I want. In my next role, this is the kind of workplace environment that I want to be in. In my next role, this is the minimum salary that I now know I should be making. And God gave me all of that and then exceeded all of my expectations. And so that happened this year, right? That happened in the past 8 months of this year. So the point that I want to impress upon the listeners here is one that we've already reiterated, is that rejection is inevitable. It can be used as a tool to protect us from staying in a place we're not meant to be in, or from getting in a situation that would not benefit us or allow us to thrive and walk in our purpose and our calling at the highest level, which is the point, right? God gave us all of these skills so that He could be glorified and edified, not only in our testimony, but in what we produce. And so I wasn't in an environment where the seeds that I was planting would be able to be successfully cultivated to grow and be sustained. And so He knew that, right? So He put me in new soil so that I can plant those seeds in an environment that will grow, that can be sustained, but also I'm a little more weathered, right? And so when we talk about all of the storms that we have to experience and endure over time, it built up my resilience, and it built up my skin for future storms that are inevitable. And it also gave me language and a mindset for what I will and will not accept, in the timeline in which I'm willing to endure those things.
Sorry, I was taking notes again. So, again, so much here. And one of the things that I want to highlight is when you said the threat of exponential excellence.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so for us, people of excellence, I graduated from the Hampton University, where we pride ourselves on being the standard of excellence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Howard, they being the relation.
No comment.
HBCUs. But there is this balance that has to happen, and you have to navigate the moments where you realize that you will be up against a wall because people
Mm-hmm.
are intimidated by your greatness.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you do that, you have to consider when your exit will be expedited. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
I know, put that in the chat. When
Mm-hmm.
your exit will be expedited, because you can get to that level of success and not have one of these moments. You just made me think about the time where I am an attorney. I've been an attorney for maybe 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
And my job thought that I was good enough, great enough to take on the assignment of the assistant general counsel.
Mm.
However, they refused to pay me what they paid her.
Mm-hmm.
And they refused to upgrade my title. But then someone else came in of a different hue, and all of the money in the budget went to making sure she was taken care of. After I finally left, she got a title upgrade. And it was just wow. So that you really are helping me to see how that exit was expedited, because you, I said, I don't have to accept this. And I went to a senior officer in the company. She was the chief administrative officer, and a woman of color, doctor just like you. And she said to me, Jamila, this is just how it is. I will never get what so and so gets from this person. And I walked out of that office and I said, no, it's
Mm-hmm.
not how it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I am out of here as soon as the
Mm-hmm.
next opportunity opens. And so, just really living in these moments and not owning that, rejection is you. That's the only thing that comes to mind. Like, I am not rejection. It's just an
Yeah.
experience.
That reminds me of an awareness that I had during my journey in a different place of practice where it as a new professional, I often was presented with opportunities to have a seat at the table to identify solutions to problems that were not necessarily neatly tucked within the scope of my job description. But people value my newness, they value my perspective. And so I sat on this committee and that committee and chaired this, etc. And at first, it was a great opportunity, right, for me to get exposure within the organization, to develop new transferable skills, and to better learn the organization and to expand my network within the organization so that I could learn the culture of the organization. God has given me a gift to have a lens to study people and processes and the culture of an organization to identify the gaps and then offer suggestions for solutions. And so I had platforms to do that. But it got to a point where I was just like, they benefiting from all of this goodness, but I'm not seeing, right, the benefits of it all. And so once I began to recognize and articulate that they appreciated what I contributed, but they didn't value it. And that's different. People can say, oh, we like what you do and you're so good at it. Come here, come do that. Would you like to do that? Folks are always ready to invite you to volunteer your time and to use your skills and expertise. But there's something really critical about understanding that the skills that they recognize in you that are valuable are skills that you need to recognize are valuable and to ask to be compensated or to be served in a way that demonstrates they value what it is they're asking you to offer. And so that may come in a variety of capacities. It could be compensation, it could be professional development, but it's important to ensure that the relationship is reciprocal. And at the point in which I had that understanding, I was like, this organization feels my relationship with this organization feels very parasitic to me. It was draining all of this goodness, but it wasn't pumping new life into me. And so that's when a good point in time to reflect on your relationship with the organization and recognize how one can advocate for themselves to get what they need within, or evaluate whether or not they need to repurpose their time, energy, and efforts to do something outside of the organization because you got the skills. So if they are willing to ask you to do it for free inside the organization, you know it's valuable. Somebody else will pay you to do it outside of that organization. So it's important to remember that as well. And everyone doesn't have the frame to know that they can be this and that, right? They can be an employee and a CEO. They can be a person of a team, but also lead their own team. And so throughout my professional tenure, I have cultivated a mindset of knowing I can do this and that and that and that. Similar to the Moore, that's part of your business name.
Yeah, no, that was so good. And it also just brings out your entrepreneurial mind. And
Mhm.
if we're really going to be successful, if we're really going to accumulate a great amount of wealth, we have to have that entrepreneurial mind
Mhm.
and start to develop the mindset and the thought processes in the way that you do.
Mhm.
And as I think through, this topic of rejection, I think there is a piece where you can start to be proactive. At some
Mhm.
point and at some age, and with God's grace, you can start to be proactive. And the reason why I say that is because when we're less mature, we go after things that are not meant for our purpose.
Mhm.
But once we mature, we just understand that we're actually not supposed to fit into certain places.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then we have to go in and we have to ask, well, then how long should I even be at this place? Because I'm here for an assignment to get a certain thing done. And
Mhm.
so, what are your thoughts about that?
I will agree, and I will hone in on a mentality that I developed at a very, very young age, like elementary school. I recognized that I was accepted but not preferred. Um, and it was based on just my experiences with my peers to see the differences between how I was treated kindly and people were friendly with me. But there are certain shenanigans and things that they did that they didn't invite me to be a part of. There were certain things that happened outside of school where they knew like that's not the one you need to bring on this trip, right? That's not the one you need to invite on this sleepover, this trip to the mall, this whatever. And so I was never an outsider in school, the way that some people may have had those experiences with their peers. I always had a friendly peer connection. But I also knew that I was never like the it girl that people wanted to gravitate towards. And having that mindset and accepting that reality and being okay with it, um, going into my collegiate career, meant that I knew that I'm not for everybody, right? But there are some people who are for me. And there are people who will gravitate towards me who do find value in my existence. And that has helped me now that I have titles and credentials and shiny things that might be appealing to some who prioritize perceptions and impressions and wanting to be affiliated with a person that has a desirable platform. It's helped me make the distinction between help me learn to, because I don't always make the distinction at first, but it's helped me learn to be okay with coming to terms with the revelation that there are some people who are gravitating towards me for a season because I'm meant to serve them, or perhaps because they're meant to serve me, but they're not necessarily meant to be in my life forever. And then there are some humans that God has allowed me to connect with who truly just find value in my existence as a human. And those relationships are priceless, because the older that we get and the more that we accumulate when it comes to things, and recognition, particularly in an age where everybody wants to be an influencer and have a platform. The people who just find value in my existence as a human and let me just be Theoria, because fundamentally I'm always going to show up as myself, minus the certifications and degrees and all of the other things. Those relationships are priceless. Those relationships you don't come around every day. And so it's also helped me learn to appreciate the moments when I can make those connections with humans.
No, that's so good. It's so good. And your training, your background, every experience has prepared you and brought you to this moment, for you to help so many people, right? Like, I just think through, like, even some of the ways that you're adding language to some of my experiences in life. And I
Mhm.
know that there's a listener right now that's saying, like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy that we got to meet Dr. Theoria Cason, and they're like, how can we connect with her? How can
Mhm.
we learn more? And so you see her website coming across the screen, because that is the best way to connect with her.
Mhm.
Maybe you're at a corporation or a nonprofit and you want to make sure that your organization can have this expertise and benefit from all the knowledge that she has. Or maybe you need some coaching from her on how to navigate this in your own life. Or maybe you need to bring her look at the more comes out.
Yes,
Maybe
the more.
stage across this world to hear this information and make sure that we are reimagining life and having life in the right frames. Because what she's talking about here is actually giving us transferable skills to be successful.
Yeah.
Right? It's from the frame of rejection right now, but you can transfer these skills in multiple areas of your life. And so, Theoria, we're both entrepreneurs,
Yes.
and me being the entrepreneur's attorney and business strategist, I got to make sure I take care of them. So how can they be supported in their entrepreneurial journey when they are experiencing rejection? Because it does tick
Yeah.
at their I'm not saying the right term, but you all will get it. It does tug at their confidence.
Sure, sure. Certainly, rejection always has the possibility to take a toll on us, right? Because I mentioned we can experience those emotions of sadness, disappointment, the dissonance between what we hoped for and what has not yet manifested in the moment. Two things come to mind. One is to have a clear understanding of the purpose for which we are doing the entrepreneurial activity. Who are we helping? Who are we called to serve? Always falling back on the why and knowing that your skill set is actually a solution to somebody else's problem. Now, the person you presented the opportunity to may not realize they have the problem, or perhaps you are not the solution that they need in this moment, but it doesn't mean that you're not necessary. You're necessary for someone, so you can rest your laurels on that truth, particularly when the work that you are doing aligns with the purpose that God has for you. And then the other thing that I want to remind people is that rejection is temporary. It is only for a moment. So feel the feels. Don't pretend like you don't have them, because it's part of the process. It's part of the human experience. Just don't live there. And it may be necessary if you are feeling overwhelmed with the response to rejection, that you rely on your tribe, your coach, your mentor, your sponsor, your friend, whoever it is that can speak life into you and hold up a mirror and remind you of who you are and whose you are, and how necessary it is for you to persevere in order to add your brilliance and your value into this work. To add your brilliance and your value into this world. You are not a nice to have. Your skill set is a need to have. And so you should surround yourself with people who can help you bounce back and remind you of that truth.
Y'all know what that pause was. I was taking notes like you should. All right. You have to add brilliance and value to this work. You have to add brilliance and value to the world.
Yeah.
Right? She's speaking to world changers. And so, I hate that our time has to end. I know the audience hates that our time has to end. Do you have any final thoughts on our topic today?
In the topic of rejection, one of the things that I will offer, because the narrative and the questions had to do with when I experienced rejection, but I also just want to offer that there may be times when you have to be the person that is facilitating the rejection. There may be times when you have to say no and walk away. And it's important to do so in a way that aligns with your integrity, to be authentic to your truth, and to remember to be kind, because you know what it feels like when someone tells you no, or when you experience that wall. And I'll just remind people what I began with. Like, rejection is a necessary part of life, right? It's necessary in that we need to experience it to grow. And sometimes it's necessary in that we need to facilitate that opportunity for growth in others. Just remember both sides of those coins. That's what I would offer to end with.
Wow, Dr. Theoria Cason, what a gem unto the world, what a gem to every space that you enter. Again, if you want to connect with her for any reason, make sure that you head to her website, theoriainpraxis.com, where you can connect with her, get to know her more, and glean from this wisdom. Now, you know your girl. I have to make sure you all are taken care of. And so, to my entrepreneurs, to my aspiring entrepreneurs, to my person that is sitting there on the fence, hating their 9 to 5 and knowing that there is more down on the inside of them, you should be heading to my website right now to get started on living your dream. You see it in the background, it's there. Don't delay. Get started on living your dream so that you can experience the fullness of life, so that you can live rather than exist. And for those of you that are serious and not curious, make sure you join me on October 31st and November 1st, where I will be doing my first ever business summit to make sure that you all are set up for 2023 to make your millions and keep your millions. Thank you, Dr. Cason. It has been another episode of The Journey to More. We will see you again in 2 weeks. See you, everyone.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.